Yeah.
Hello, this is Miss Bennett. I'm sitting here with my son talking about these triangles that we see, and he starts telling me all about triangles and how these are like some chips. Are these like triangle chips, Daniel?
Yeah.
Can you say triangle chips?
Triangle chips.
Yeah, and we're trying to figure out if these triangle chips are congruent, aren't we? Now, this actual math problem wants me to take time to prove to see if these triangles are really congruent, but we're not going to take time to do that. All I want to do for this little video is show you how you can tell if two triangles are congruent, and then later on we'll talk about how to make a formal proof about it. So, one thing you have to remember is there's a few different rules. We've got 5 different postulates that actually can help us determine when triangles are congruent, and you may have seen these possibly in your class. But there's actually 5 different ones, and if you have this much information, there's enough information to say 2 triangles are congruent. If you don't have at least this much of information, then you'll have to say there's not enough information to determine if they're congruent. Doesn't mean that they're not congruent. It just means that there's not enough information. So here's some of the bad cases where there's not enough information to determine if they're congruent. And this situation is when you do know there's enough information to determine if they're congruent. Now, this actual lovely images I'm using are from a website called regentsprep.com. They can give you a little bit more information if you want to stare at these examples a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is first label the picture with what I've got going on here. So you'll see I've kind of color-coded what's in purple, what's in green, and what's in blue based on what the given information is, and I just labeled it in the picture. After I do that, I'm like, well, I need to determine if it's congruent. So I'm going to go back and show you how I know it's congruent by ASA. Because if you actually look right here, what I labeled, I had an angle congruent to an angle over here. I had a side congruent to a side right here. And I had another angle congruent to this purple angle. And by looking at the labels right here, you can actually see, no matter which way I read it, whether I read it clockwise or counterclockwise, in either picture, that I see the same thing, ASA. So a lot of times, I recommend you actually write the letters ASA for your labels, and you actually can see it a little bit better if you actually write the letters on top of the labels. So, I do know that those 2 triangles are congruent by angle, side, angle. It even looked like a similar situation to the example right there. And I will finally say there is enough information to determine that these 2 triangles are congruent by ASA. I need to go back and correct myself. I think I told you a second ago that if you wanted to look at some of the cool images and stuff that can be really helpful in helping you out with this class, to go to a website called regentsprep.com. I meant to say go to regentsprep.org.